Hebrews chapter 8, 1 through 3. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heavens, Jesus, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices. Wherefore, it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. All right, so earlier passages refer to Jesus' role as a priest, offering sacrifice on behalf of mankind. Hebrews 6, 19-20. That was part of an explanation of how Jesus' priesthood, symbolized by Melchizedek, is superior to that of the Levitical priest. Here in chapter 8, the idea is being applied to the new covenant as opposed to the old covenant of the Levitical priesthood. The sacrifices of existing Levitical priests are described as plural, gifts and sacrifices. As a priest, Jesus must have something, translated somewhat, in the King James Version, to offer God. This word, however, is singular. It implies a difference between the two, namely that Jesus' sacrifice for sin is a once and for all action. This is a distinction the writer of Hebrews, God, will make again later in Hebrews 9, 24-26 and Hebrews 10-12. Jesus is described using the word, now again, a Greek word, I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but here's my effort at it, prosyneke. This is a Greek tense, which implies a past, once and for all completed action. The reference to Levitical priests earlier in the verse uses the same root word but with a different tense. That word is prospherin, which is an active present action. They had to keep doing it over and over and over. Putting these ideas together makes the intent of the original Greek word that much clearer. Levitical priests are offering repeated sacrifices, plural, which Jesus has offered a single sacrifice, right? His blood on the cross. So the passage will continue by providing more details as to why Jesus' sacrifice and his covenant are therefore better than the system of Old Testament law. Hebrews 8, 4-7. For if he were on the earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God, when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. But now hath he obtained more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that covenant has been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. So here, God had a purpose in mind, in which went beyond the Old Testament law. Those rituals and objects were meant as symbols of the truth, not the truth itself, which is Jesus. It's the same idea that's stated in clear language. The Old Covenant by itself is flawed. If that system had been perfect, there would have been no reason for God to promise something better. So if God himself made the promise of a new covenant, we cannot claim that the old covenant is his ultimate plan. The upcoming quotation, right, is from Prophet Jeremiah, who wrote about the impending defeat and exile of Israel many centuries before the birth of Jesus Christ. God was pointing to a relationship with mankind beyond rituals and repetitive sacrifices. The description provided by Jeremiah exactly matches the pattern fulfilled by Jesus and preached by the apostles who followed him. Let's read verse 8. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Okay, so that's Jeremiah 31 to 34. This is used to support the writer's claim that God promised a better covenant than the Old Testament system of priests and sacrifices. Jeremiah is very clear. This is a new covenant, something meant to replace the old covenant. Jeremiah's statement is forward-looking. It's a promise God made, which was meant to be fulfilled at a later date. Jeremiah was not looking in the past at some decree God made long ago. This was at the time a new statement from God, the reference to the people of Israel as well as the house of Judah. So that emphasizes that this is part of God's plan for his chosen people, one which would be extended to the rest of the world through Jesus Christ. You can read that in Romans 3:20 and in Romans 5:12. Hebrews 8 verse 9. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. So Israel came with the very consequences promised them by God in Deuteronomy 30:15 and 19. The new covenant is superior because it's grounded in the work of Jesus rather than in fallible human efforts. Read Galatians 2:16. Hebrews 8 verse 10. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. This verse points out the difference between a covenant based on external legalistic rules and one based on an internal personal experience with God. So the drive for obedience from the inside out is the work of the Holy Spirit. Those who are saved. Read 2 Corinthians 3:1-3. Jeremiah was not the only prophet to make such a claim. Also, this was said in Ezekiel 36:26-27. Hebrews 8 verse 11. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. Okay, this is now talking about the indwelling of the Holy Spirit as a guide and a teacher for those who are saved. See that in John 16:7-11. The focus of the Old Covenant was on adherence to the rules and laws taught and interpreted by others. The New Covenant focuses on a personal relationship and response to God through Christ. This is not a problem for Gentiles, all right? But the Jews, it's a real problem, which I think is why God wrote Hebrews. It's so specific to Jews or even converted Jews. We'll see later on as we get to Hebrews 10, the Christian Jews. It's really very specifically speaking to the Jews and their refusal to accept Christ and to stay to the laws of Moses. But God will save a remnant. But it may take until the return of the Antichrist, right before the second coming of the Messiah, for them to understand that. Hebrews 8:12-13. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. In that he saith, the new covenant he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So here now, verses 8 to 12 contain a quotation, right, from Jeremiah, prophecy from Jeremiah 31 to 34. This was offered as proof that God's intent was never to use the old covenant, the Levitical priesthood, to obtain ultimate salvation of mankind. Rather, those rituals and laws were meant to point towards the Messiah, Hebrews 8:5. Even the tabernacle was intended as an earthly symbol or a pattern of the real altar in heaven, Hebrews 8:1-2. So here, this verse returns to the point being made by the writer of Hebrews. God is the one replacing the old covenant with the new covenant, since the old system was flawed and imperfect, Hebrews 7:11. The new covenant is superior. It's not based on physical earthly things. Hebrews 5:9, Hebrews 9:12. As pointed out earlier by the writer of Hebrews, this prediction of a replacement for the Levitical priesthood is not rare or unique in the Jewish scriptures. Psalm 110, just read it all. It's not that long. Psalm 110, read that. And then read Ezekiel 36, 26-27. All right, there was no reason that the Jewish people did not recognize. It was clear, but they chose not to. They chose their agenda, their ego, their political needs over recognizing Jesus as their Messiah the first time around. Second time around, they won't make that mistake. Or at least let's hope not. So at the same time, this comment is prophetic. Earlier in this chapter, the sacrifices of the priest were described using a present tense verb. In other words, at the time the book of Hebrews was written, the temple was still being used for ritual sacrifice. This verse, however, indicates that the now obsolete old covenant is ready to vanish, wax away. Not long after these words are written, the Jewish temple was obliterated, right, by the Romans, 70 AD, as predicted here and elsewhere, right? It was predicted the second temple would be destroyed, not one stone left on another, right? Luke 21, verse 6, Hosea 3, verse 4. That ended Israel's ability to offer official sacrifices, a state which has persisted even until now. They're waiting for that third temple to be built. Potters, stay in the Word.